Informative, educational, objective, inclusive, comprehensive. This is Progress Report. Updates and conversations from the Government Information Service.
Good day and welcome to Progress Report, updates and conversations from the Government Information Service. This is our second show this week, Gleneva, my co-host Gleneva Hodge, and we had a really great first show with the Honorable Premier. A lot of information, a lot to chew on, and we are still in the Ministry of Finance. We are with the Ministerial Assistant in the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Courtney Morton. How are you today, sir?
I'm fine, sir.
All right, it's a pleasure to have you here. So we had a really great conversation with the Premier about finance, about GST, and it's actually fitting that you would be our next guest on this show because for me, a lot of people don't realize that finance is the engine. Much of what you see going on with the development in Anguilla and everything else, I mean, the Bible says money answers all things, if you're being honest, right? But it's that engine for everything else. I heard the Premier said in a press conference, that you're the man that makes sure the zeros add up. You're that. You're the man that makes sure, okay, what case we're presenting, our figures, along with the team, of course, our figures in our budget, in our projections, with the team there in finance from Miss Harden Hodge, P.S. Kathleen Rogers, come down to Miss Mead, and all those things, how budgets work and everything works. Finance is very important. But because it's not something that you see as tangible as a school, a building, a road, or whatever, we tend to forget where it comes from.
Very true.
But it all adds up. So we're going to just get into a little bit about the finance and what you do as Ministerial Assistant in Finance and some really exciting things that have been happening in finance. Like, for instance, we'll get to this, but truth be told, we had communication about the highest accommodation tax being recorded.
Look forward to hearing
a little bit more. Let's talk about the dollars.
A little bit more of that. The dollars and the cents. So we're going to make some sense. We're going to make some sense of the dollars today.
Okay.
So let's just begin a bit, Courtney. Tell us what it's been like, Ministerial Assistant in the Ministry of Finance. Just give us a little insight on what that's like for you.
Okay, first I must say thank you much for having me on the show.
All right, it's our pleasure.
Being the Minister of Finance is a total turnaround from what I've been doing previously in banking and finance.
Okay.
So you get to meet investors.
Uh-huh.
You get to sit around the table and discuss MOUs. You get to look at the budget and have an input. You can just, when I say input, you have a say in cabinet and it goes around that way. So basically anything you do finance that passes through finance, more or less some of the times, and most of the times, that will call me in for a discussion on it.
Okay.
So, that's basically what goes on.
So I would imagine that because finance spreads across every department, every ministry in government, you're not just there all the time. So there are other ministries that you probably would have to attend meetings for and that type of thing.
Well, not really. The only time I attend other meetings in ministries is at the minister's request.
Okay, at the
so
minister's
sometimes
request.
if Mr. Kenneth Hodge is going up to a project,
Mm-hmm.
and he feel he wants my assistant, he'll call me and ask me if I could accompany him, that kind of way.
Okay.
So
most of the time.
So you've been moving around in the different ministries at the minister's request. So have you been gaining some experience across government systems?
Lots of experience across government systems.
Okay.
You get to see how the money is spent.
That's the
Where
important
it's
thing.
spent, and then you get to know that all ministries don't generate funds.
No, they don't.
So,
And that's important to see how the money is spent, and we can jump right into it with that one, you spoke, Ivan, about the conversation that we had with the premier, and one of the things that came out, and I know right after that conversation, Ivan had been speaking
Yes.
about it for some time.
I can't get over it.
We were driving, and Ivan was still speaking about it.
So let me tell him. So do you know, like, in all honesty, the country was just about $500 million in debt. Like, that's where we were. 439, 497.
$496 million.
496. Like, 12,000 people was $496 million in debt.
And then, yeah.
And that's where the conversation came about GST, about paying our way. And like Gleneva says, like, we got to make sense of the dollars and cents now.
Right.
So
tell us. We know in June 2020.
In June 2020, on the 31st day in office, like you said, $500 million in debt.
Where are we now?
We are now down to 442 million.
Okay, so within 2 years, we've reduced our debt by about $50 million.
And that's about 20 months.
Okay.
And that's going in the right direction.
In the right direction.
So it's fair enough to say that a number of the measures that we have put in place during COVID and otherwise to open back up the country,
right,
to market during the time when people were probably saying that it didn't make sense, those things are going, because our main economic driver, which is tourism, has been doing well. Accommodation tax, we're going to touch on that again.
Yeah.
The highest it's been ever recorded.
Right? Yeah, we're going
So if we talk about the accommodation tax, jump right into it. So in January of 2020, now we received the accommodation tax in January from December.
Okay.
So in January of 2020, we have made around 6.9 million in accommodation tax.
Okay.
Now, bear in mind that in February, March of 2020, the country shut down.
Right.
So we had no tourists coming in.
Right.
I think around July, August, we started soft opening with protocols.
Right.
So we had few tourists trickling in and out.
Right.
So the following period, which was in 2021, we made 1.4 million. So you see, even though we had protocols in place, we had a smaller number of tourists coming through from, say, September down to December, we made 1.4 million.
We did have some economic
We did some economic activity. People went back to work a little
Right.
here and there,
Right.
COVID using the mask and taking your tests. In 2020, January, we
2020.
almost double that figure, we make 8.4 million.
2020,
2021.
2022, sorry.
Okay.
2022.
We're now
made that
in
amount.
the present year.
So,
Okay.
so we doubled.
Well, almost.
Close enough.
So where we come from, with the country being closed, to open the country and have more tourists coming in, this would have attributed to American Airlines coming direct flights.
Right.
More tourists coming to the island.
Right.
More weddings.
Right. Groups.
Everything.
Everything.
So this is where the country grew from.
Okay.
From being closed in 2021 to 2022, making $8.4 million.
That's great.
Wow.
The numbers sound excellent.
Wow.
But I do have to just go back just a little bit, Courtney, and just ask, we're now, our national debt, if you stated, it's now down 50 million. We've made payments of about $50 million.
Right.
Are we able to service this debt? We are seeing that we're getting good numbers in accommodation tax. Are we able to service this debt on our own? Have we been paying our own way on those payments? And also tell us a little bit about how we got to that $496 million. What made up the bulk of that debt, and then are we able to pay our way?
The bulk of that debt would have come from the banking resolution. And then there would have been an additional 50 plus million to prop the bank up.
Right.
Okay.
Are we able to service our debt at this time? Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes, we are. And
That is good.
If things keep going as they're going with the tourism numbers, which is our main industry, we will be able to service this for a long time to come.
Okay.
With the influx of tourists, American Airlines, and possibly if we get another international airline,
Yeah.
we will definitely sit in a good place to make sure to take care of our debts.
Okay. That's excellent. I leaned over to my my computer here because I wanted to bring up something. You were talking about the numbers, and something that's significant for me, and I got these numbers from finance, so I know you would have them too, is that for Q1 we budgeted collection of accommodation tax of $7 million.
7.6 million.
7.6 million, and the actual was 18 million.
18.7.
18.7 million.
Yes.
So we have more than doubled what?
Kudos to those in the industry. Kudos to the Ministry of Finance, the team there, because you still have to collect this. I mean, it's a little different than what's the other tax? It's not accommodation tax, it's property tax, because property tax would require a little bit more policing to collect, and there are systems in place to collect the accommodation tax. But kudos, because the thing about tax, what people don't realize, it has to be collected.
And so that's a really good segue into where we go next. We collected, you said 18.7 million, and that is more than double what was projected. Does that amount reflect current amounts, or was that arrears? What exactly does that amount represent?
Well, this is current and some arrears, because we're speaking about the overall collection for the first quarter. Now, we must say that when the government collects on taxes and revenues, it gives them the opportunity to pay off debt,
Right.
pay more money to the social services,
Right.
be able to assist more people with the medical, elderly with the medical.
Right.
But one of the things that it did this period is that it paid 50% of the deferred salaries to all civil servants. Now, deferred salaries, I think, could have been owed to staff probably over a decade.
Yeah, because if I'm not mistaken, deferred salaries made a part of the austerity measures for years now that have been in place. So we can kind of would have seen some savings or some alleviation to balance our budgets and the like. But deferred doesn't mean that it wasn't going to be paid. So it had to be paid.
Right.
And if I may, a lot of what we saw in the community, even over the Christmas Eve in recently, you see people making some improvements to their homes. You see people would have been paying off certain debt in certain areas and stuff. And the economic activity that you're seeing in the country is because that cash was able to circulate. I tell people often, on the most basic level, an economy is just the movement of cash.
Yeah.
On the most basic level. And if it's not moving,
You
then
can't do anything.
you can't do anything.
One of the other things that government was able to do, we paid the staff of the farmer MBA some of their pension.
All right.
Right.
They received that. We paid the farmer staff of CCB some of the pension. They're in the process now of the final process of payment.
Oh, wow.
No.
So there's money flowing.
Right.
Right.
I did say some because, as properties are sold, they inherited more money to be paid off the pension. So while they haven't received all the pension,
They receive
they
some.
received some.
And that's a good place to start.
It is,
Yeah.
and I know for time there are persons within the community who lamented on not being able to have that pension and thinking that pension money was lost. So
Right.
for them to be able to get that, that's a good thing. And one of the things that I think we really want to bring out here is that when you receive taxes, it is about improving the livelihoods of persons within the community. Because I know a lot of times persons are concerned that government is getting all of this money. What are they doing with this money? You're taxing us, we're getting all of these taxes, but what is happening? And so it's really good to hear that this money is going back into the community, it's going back into persons. Persons can, as you say, do renovations to their homes and whatever it is, whether it is even to be a buffer for the high inflation costs that we are seeing now.
Yes, which we have no control over.
Right. So it's good for persons to understand how their taxes work, and I think for a long time persons may not understand how taxes work for them. So
Yeah, truth be told, and I've heard this with a little sidebar talk and stuff like government is going to tax people to pay salaries. No, the government don't tax people to pay salaries because I know for a fact, that some people in the community can't help themselves. I don't know if it was this morning, but he shared a recording from Ninja Man, a music person. This is a little cyber. And he, I remember when he went through the phase of Brother Desmond, and he told the interviewee, I know the interviewer, that they got the scripture wrong. It's not God help those who can't help themselves. It's God help those who help those who can't help themselves. And government has to help those who can't help themselves. So the money goes into funding social projects. Like people get injured and they have to be flown out. The government has to absorb that.
And the premier spoke about that in terms of, where we are in terms of the budget and
Right.
just within the first quarter exceeding that overseas medical.
That
and
is
so
true.
And that's probably year over year, because I think we had the same issue last year. So it's probably year over year when you bust that budget.
And that's important, because you would then again need to be generating revenue and income to prop up these areas of our community that needs the assistance.
Yeah.
So
how Courtney, tell us how does the rest of the year, given the first quarter we've seen the collections exceed projections, do we anticipate that will continue throughout the rest of the year? Are we looking at slowing down just a little bit?
I think you'll see through the rest of the year. We have a couple of hotels. If you look at the tourism sector, it's going longer than usual.
right,
It's more at the upper end percentage and the lower end at this time of the year.
right,
I think in previous years at this time we're kind of tapering down to close.
yeah,
I think it's at a plateau level of above 80% about so running through. So it's a good place to be, a good space to be. The more tourists on the island, the more revenues we generate.
right,
One of the key things though is that going back a little, when we spoke about inflation before, we in Angola don't control inflation.
it's true.
It comes from the overseas purchases, shipping and transportation, and the cost is going up, and then inflation is also driven by what's happening globally.
Right.
And there's a war in Ukraine.
Of course.
So prices way up there.
Yeah.
And the questions always posed to me when I'm out on the street that with inflation and with the cost of GST, it's going to kill the country. People have to understand that when the shopkeeper or the entrepreneur pays the money up front for GST, they get it back in the end. So it's like a wash. So it doesn't kill the product. It doesn't kill the shopkeeper. So you pay and you get back.
Yeah.
So it's just like an artificial charge. You
Yeah.
pay it in this month, you get it back next month.
Yeah, because the again, it's the movement of
It's
money.
the movement, right.
So you touched on something that I wanted to touch on there with GST specifically, because we often forget that there are goods. There's this basket of goods that was attracting the IGT 9% that no longer will. So you can't expect that everything that you see is just going to be up by 4%, which it should be, because it was 9% before. It's at 13 now. The Premier gave us some nuggets, because I did not recognize or realize or remember whatever other R word we use, that it was going to be 17.5%.
Right.
And we got it down to 13%. So there's going to be some goods that won't attract GST, so they should get
A better price.
a better price.
Yeah.
And then I know there's a call over and over, and we will have the Honorable Minister of Economic Development, Mr. Kyle Hodge, at some point to talk about the legislation, the consumer protection legislation. I don't want to misquote it. If it is consumer protection, what do we call it?
Price control.
Price
It's
control.
going to be I look forward to having him next time. He can tell us exactly
what that is. We would need to know about that, because that's something that people are crying out for as well. But inflation, we're still here. You're saying, and I agree, everybody agrees, we know it's something that we can't necessarily control, but we have to respond to it.
But besides that, the government has passed on some cost savings benefits to the people.
Okay.
We will receive a reduction in fuel costs. We're removing the government tax from the fuel costs.
Okay.
And they also select basket of items again that will be exempted from duties for a period of 6 months.
Okay.
So these things are going in place. I think it should be in place on the 19th, but it should be around this time going in place.
Okay, that's good.
And
So we should
just
start
like-
to see something.
Right.
So something just like Tatola issue and
Yes.
Barbados issue, the government of Angola also followed suit and did something also.
And I think that is something that the people deserve to know, because one of the things that persons say is that, yes, we agree, inflation is controlled outside of here. We have no control, but what will the government of Angola do
Yes.
to provide that sort of buffer
Right.
to us? So if you're saying that we can expect with the removal of taxes on fuel, or baskets items, food basket items, you're going to see the removal of duties, we should start to see some movement in a downward motion in
Yes.
terms of prices
Right.
on some of those essential items.
Correct.
And that is really good, because that is what the people are crying out. And at this time, a lot of persons are saying their dollar isn't dollaring. As much as
I haven't heard that one. That's good.
Yeah, their dollar isn't dollaring as much as it used
be
to.
careful, he's a writer now, but your dollar isn't dollaring. That's
Right.
good. I like that.
Yeah. So you spoke earlier about you're needed and your expertise is used across the government services as requested by different ministers. We would have seen a number of capital projects coming out of the Ministry of Infrastructure, most notably, I should say. You have, for example, the Carteret Boulevard, the People's Market, the Airport Road, the new road up at the Albina Lake Arch Comprehensive School, new site. Can
Blunt
you...
Point Ferry Terminal.
The Blunt Point... There we go, the Blunt Point Ferry.
would not allow us to do that.
Right. So can you just get into a little bit of where some of that funding has been coming from? How is it that we're able to access the funding to complete these projects?
Okay, so let me start with the Blunt Point Ferry Terminal and the road for the Albina Lake Arch Comprehensive New School.
Okay.
Those are all part of the 60 million holiday project that we have.
Okay.
So the funding for those projects came from that.
Okay.
So this would...
That the economic resilience fund.
No,
No, so this would have been back post-Armour,
correct.
those funds.
Those
Okay.
funds. The funds that build the schools, the clinics, and all that.
Okay.
That's part of it.
Okay.
The Blunt Point Pier was also part of it.
Okay.
Okay. The Carteret Boulevard, the Airport Road, those are funded from the British.
Okay.
Okay. The People Market, if you go back and remember, we had contributed material,
Right.
contributed labor,
Right.
and then government would have come in at the end and put in
Right.
some more funds. So we
And
had
then
this distribution
Malia
community.
too. Uh-huh.
So we got to thank them for the work
Yeah.
they've done. They come and they did some work,
Right.
and also some funded from government, and we get a project up and done.
So we're looking at a collaborative effort.
Collaborative effort.
You're looking at associations from within the region.
Correct.
Currently living in Anguilla.
Mhm.
You're looking at the government of Anguilla. You're looking at financial aid from the
and
British.
don't forget Mr. Wilmot Richardson, he contributed paint.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
Malyahana has adopted it as well.
Right.
So they're gonna finish up that work. I know
Yeah.
the Minister Hodge again was talking about doing the flow and other things.
Awesome.
And it's a very
And-
good project to see the market light up at night, late at night. You
Yes.
go there, you chill, you chat. It's,
Yeah, I look forward to that
it become a meeting
conversation.
place for some people.
Apparently it has.
And the Carteret Boulevard, it's now open,
Yeah.
and I know I've seen the clips, and
Yeah.
a lot of the flora has been donated
Yes.
by a number of persons and entities. So I'm sure you'd like to thank those persons who have contributed to the overall aesthetics of that area as well.
Well, it's still under construction for some most places we have. Social Security still have to finish.
Yeah, and the bank has to
the
finish
National
it.
Bank. So I guess on that time it's due, they will, I don't want to call names and I miss someone.
That's fair enough.
That's fair enough. 'cause
But I know in due
I wasn't
time-
gonna take that on either.
I'm certain we'll have the
Yeah.
minister
Oh,
on
yeah,
here.
he will have
And
everybody
he
winning.
and he will be willing to. Right. So as we kind of wind down and wrap up, what can we expect from the Ministry of Finance for the remainder of the second quarter and just going forward? Is there anything that we can look forward to that we haven't touched on as yet?
Well, I spoke about the reduced costs in food stuff going forward. So basically, that went to executive council already. It was tabled, but moved through. One of the other things that you can look for is projects to come. There's quite a bit in the pipeline.
Can you whisper a few our way?
He tried to whisper to the other side of the room.
But there are just a few many projects to come through, and once they come through, it'll be real good for Anguilla.
You know,
One of the things, though, that the Resilient Fund is doing for us is the construction of the airport terminal.
okay.
And that's a needed facility.
All right.
The
that's-
Blunt Point terminal makes the public airport look like.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah.
So we can look forward to having a terminal that's the gem of the Caribbean. I know Princess Juliana.
Built for purpose.
It's built for purpose.
Built for purpose,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But now that you mention those projects that come on stream, there's something that is mentioned, but I don't think it gets enough credit. Every project that comes here has
Yes.
a social component
Yes,
attached
attaches
to
to
it right
it.
now.
Yeah.
I mean, we see and we probably overlook it with the American University Anguilla.
Right.
We saw they donated laptops, tablets, and computers to the public library. I think there's a community center. Did they do the community center in Island
I'm not
Harbor?
too sure who did that one.
I'm not too sure who did
Okay.
their. I can't remember the name right now, but that's very important.
Yeah.
That's very important.
And then
And-
Aurora came in also, and,
Uh-huh.
and they donated laptops. Should be coming soon, laptops also.
Uh-huh.
Anthony, whatever money Anthony raised to purchase laptops, they match.
Oh wow,
Okay.
nice.
Nice.
You know,
Nice.
so.
And this is how the country is built.
And then also the
Yeah.
key thing in the contract, in the MOU was the signing, was that MRI machine.
Right.
So
Okay.
we should be receiving that probably within the next 3 months.
Okay.
That's great. And
excellent.
is that a policy coming out
That's a
of?
policy coming out of this administration. And
That's-
going forward, any investor coming to the country to invest will have to donate
to
to
a
a
social
social
project.
project.
That is excellent for.
Can
for
you think of some that
Yeah.
so we can put it out there from now that needs to be funded? I mean, we have
You
the
know,
ministerial
you-
assistant here. He's the
we,
man that
we have them here,
balances
and I know all. It would be remiss of me to sit here and not say that there are a number of youth initiatives
Uh-huh.
that is always looking forward to receiving some sort of funding to help to bolster
That is
their
correct.
budgets, and so that they can reach out and continue the work that is being done. And you know, there must be more youth engagement, and we're gonna definitely get into that,
Yes,
Ivan, as we
we
go
will,
through
we
with this
will,
show.
we
But
will.
as long as there's funding that's going into the communities, that is definitely important. And so having that policy be part of, and if you're
That's
saying that we can
important.
expect a number of projects coming on board, we can then expect some
Yep.
community
Yep.
engagement.
Yes, I
along
think
line.
that makes a lot of people happy, and I think that's actually a good point to put right there. I don't know if you have anything else to say. I'll tell you one of the things about Progress Report is that we are trying to keep it just an update and conversations about what's happening in government, what's happening on the street, so people can have it unfiltered, listen to it, unbridled conversation, and that's what we had here today. So we try not to go over 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think we're a little bit about.
But honestly, it's a pleasure being here.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, there's so much more I could say, but I'll say for the next time around.
Yes,
Yes.
because you will. That's we didn't even have to ask if he's coming back. It's the next time around. That's
So the
lovely.
next time around. So again, Ivan and Jennifer, I'd like to say thank you very much for having me on Progress Report.
Thank you very
Thank you
much
for
for
being
accepting
here.
and thank you
Thank
for
you so
being
much.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that has been Progress Report.
And we'll see you next time.
All right.